Coming up, no matter what the hurricanes toss at us, GA is there to help.
AOPA is there to help make sure pilots can access any airport without paying huge fees, and a camera to capture your view all around your airplane.
And training to survive the worst. AOPA Live this week begins in just a moment.
Build and flying with the Sonex aircraft B models. The B models offer more room and comfort, more fuel, more panel space, more engine choices, and the same great Sonex aircraft flight characteristics. Learn more at sonexaircraft.com.
This is AOPA Live This Week with Tom Haynes and Melissa Rudinger.
It just doesn't stop. Yet another hurricane is pounding U.S. territory.
And once Maria has moved on, we know that General Aviation will move in to help. As we reported last week from the Florida Keys, GA was hard at work bringing in much-needed supplies to communities cut off by road for days. Some pilots we met had flown such missions before, but for me, it was a heady few days in heavily loaded airplanes off short, narrow strips, making decisions on the fly, ripe for mistakes. Alongside me was Richard McSpadden in his Navion. Richard is the executive director of the AOPA Air Safety Institute, and he joins us now to talk about that. So, Richard, what'd you think of that experience last week?
Hey, Tom, it was a moving experience, wasn't it, to see the devastation in the Middle Keys firsthand.
It was.
And it was also rewarding to be able to use your skills and your knowledge and your assets to help people that truly needed it. And we could get into some areas where it didn't look like they were having access any other way for the first couple of days.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So, and from your Air Force training, you've certainly learned how to evaluate a situation quickly. How did that help out for last week?
Yeah, that's funny you asked, Melissa. That kind of struck me there. You know, I have flown a lot of complex and large missions from my Air Force days. And what struck me was, you know, where you get in trouble there is the same way you could get in trouble with the missions we were flying. And that is just the basics, you know, the basics in terms of knowing how your airplanes fly, knowing what the right frequencies are, knowing your route of flight, so that all that stuff is kind of second nature, so you can focus on all the flexibility that's going to come your way, whether it be how the airplanes are loading or what airport you got to go into or the weather that you're going to divert around. So I found myself going back to spending a lot of time on the basics, making sure I knew my airplane, knew the frequencies, knew the route of flight, and who I was flying behind or in front of. A lot of study there I think is helpful.
Yeah. One thing I noticed was the heaviness of the airplane. You know,
yeah.
I fly my airplane a lot, pretty heavy, because we use it for missions around here. We're hauling people in gear and all kinds of stuff all over the place. So I'm kind of used to that, but I could see where somebody who's used to flying with only maybe one other person on board, when you were flying heavily loaded, it makes a lot of difference in the handling capabilities of the airplane.
Yeah, it does, and it was noticeable, and I don't know what you thought, but it's more noticeable the tighter you go into, you know, so
yeah.
You and I flew into some pretty narrow strips in there with potholes and pretty weak shoulders, and we didn't know a lot about the airports, and so I agree with you, the performance of the airplane is really noticeable when you're trying to get the most out of it.
So what advice would you have for other pilots who may think about going down and helping out after Maria gets done with us?
You know, my advice would be make sure you're ready and your airplane's ready. So if you think your airplane has any kind of issue, the biggest thing you don't want to do is go down there and be part of the problem, right? We're going down there to rescue, not to be rescued.
Right.
And so that would be make sure your airplane's ready to fly, oil is changed, tires are set, you know, all that, no kind of issues with your airplane, because there's not a lot of support for you down there. That's the way you have to think about it.
Yeah.
So, Richard, the Air Safety Institute has a special course for pilots flying humanitarian missions.
We sure do. It's a public benefit flying course, and it's a really good course. It helps walk you through some of the things we just talked about to make sure that you're ready, your airplane's ready, and some things to think about that are unique to the kind of public benefit flying that help you not get too wrapped up in the mission focus so that you kind of lose track of it. All has to be done safely.
All right. Thanks, Richard. Thanks for your help last week. Very important stuff. And also important, make sure you bring what is really needed for first responders and those impacted by such events. See the list of suggested items on our website, and if you can't fly, consider supporting others through contributions to AeroBridge, Operation Airdrop, and many other organizations that help organize humanitarian flights.
Hurricane Irma had an impact on a lot of flying, of course, including Embry-Riddle University in Florida. Just in front of the storm's arrival, 62 flight instructors at the school flew their fleet to 2 locations in Alabama. The pilots, navigating 44 Cessna 172s, 9 multi-engine Diamond 42s, 8 Piper Arrows, and a Beechcraft Baron through a thick band of rain, and were grateful to be hosted by Auburn University and Atlantic Aviation once they reached Alabama. The school has a hurricane evacuation plan for their aircraft, with different airports selected throughout the southeastern United States as locations to wait out the storm.
So a question for you, should an FBO be allowed to control all of the ramp space at a public airport and charge you to use it, even if you don't want any FBO services? AOPA thinks not, and that's why we're pushing to get reasonable access at all public use airports. This week, AOPA convened the first ever meeting of the Airport Access Advisory Panel. Members include independent FBO owners, airport operators, and individual pilots, and the goal? Develop guidelines for airports to ensure reasonable access and services without unjust discrimination or egregious prices.
We're concerned in very few cases, and let me reiterate, the FBOs are our partners in what we do. We couldn't be flying in this wonderful country unless we had the support of the FBOs, and we think they should be profitable, and we respect their business. But at the same time, we want to make sure that our members have plenty of access to airports, that are treated fairly, and that the entire system isn't brought under by a huge extra burden that none of us can afford today.
AOPA has filed FAA Part 13 complaints about 3 airports that have drawn many complaints from our members. The FAA has yet to respond to AOPA, although it has been in contact with all 3 of the airports. Meanwhile, the attorney for the FBO at Heber City, Utah, did answer, even though that airport was not one of the 3 where AOPA filed a complaint. According to a report in AIN, the response was essentially, go someplace else if you don't like our prices. In other words, let them eat cake. Interesting response from an FBO that has the highest fuel prices in that region.
It is. I don't think that worked out well for somebody else back in history, and hopefully we can turn it around there as well.
I hope so.
Well, in a little more than a week, the FAA runs out of money, so the best bet is that the House will vote on short-term funding extension next week, and then take up the issue of air traffic control privatization in October. Some claim there are enough votes to pass H.R. 2997, the bill that hands over our ATC system to an airline-controlled board. A White House official claims the vote count, quote, looks very good. But the House Transportation Committee's top Democrat told Politico last week that the Republicans are trolling for Democratic votes. Representative Peter DeFazio says that means they really don't have the votes yet, which is why you need to call Congress. If you haven't already told your representative that you oppose privatizing air traffic control, call the number you see on the screen now. We need to push any wavering members of Congress into the no column and keep them there. The vote will be close, and your voice counts.
And remember, the airlines are throwing everything they've got into getting control of the air traffic control system. Yet another so-called grassroots group has suddenly appeared to support spinning of ATC from the government. Flyers for Fairness was supposedly founded by former air traffic controller Alan Clendenin, but Bloomberg calls it another AstroTurf group. The group won't say who's paying the bills. Bloomberg says Airlines for America doesn't expressly deny paying for Flyers for Fairness. Clendenin writes that the air traffic control system is obsolete and causing delays. Funny thing, before he was for privatization, he was against it.
And I will say about the privatization, the proposal of privatization, does the American public really want the same group of people that run the airlines, where they beat you and drag you off airplanes, to be the ones that are in charge of air traffic control safety? And how do you think that's going to end? Well, I want you to know that the United States air traffic control system is the safest and most efficient in the world. While there's privatized systems all over the world, nobody does it safer, more efficient, and cheaper than the United States of America in cost per operations. Also, that air traffic control and air traffic controllers in our system doesn't create delays. What creates delays in the United States of America is the weather and our airport capacity, which is runways.
Oh, and maybe you've heard the airlines disparaging our air traffic control system because they still use paper strips?
A lot of the misinformation we hear about flight strips, those are just memory joggers for the air traffic controllers, and quite honestly could have been done away with decades ago. But the air traffic controllers like them because they can look down and they can see things instantly.
Well, isn't that something?
Funny how he flipped.
Yeah. I wonder if there was money involved in that, do you suppose?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I can say there's some folks in Washington running around waving a paper strip, and it makes for cute, political theater, but it ignores the fact that the FAA has modernized. They put in modern platforms, and the flight strips are just like the gentleman mentioned, just a memory tool that the pilots or the controllers really don't want to let go of.
Yeah. Amazing.
Pilots like to show off their aviation excursions, and with all the new action camera technology out there, it's becoming easier all the time. AOPA Editor-at-Large Dave Hirschman had a chance to fly with Garmin's newest camera, the VIRB 360.
All-seeing 360-degree cameras represent an amazing technology, but in aviation, they seem like an answer in search of a question. And frankly, most 360-degree flying videos are about as interesting as surveillance camera footage at banks that aren't being robbed. Things happen, but none of them are particularly compelling. Now Garmin has introduced its VIRB 360, and it's quite a bit different than the competition. It starts and stops recording video with one button, and as you might expect from Garmin, it's got built-in GPS that can show speed, altitude, ground track, and other measures. The VIRB 360 basically fuses two 4K action cameras together, one facing forward and the other aft. Both have overlapping 200-degree fields of view, and the camera stitches these images together internally. I've been flying with the VIRB 360, and it records some interesting images that allow viewers to mouse around the sky, looking at whatever they wish. It's not perfect. The camera's rolling shutter tends to distort the propeller arc on sunny days. The VIRB 360 is easy and enjoyable to use. It's waterproof, so it can be mounted inside or outside airplanes. It can record video continuously for more than 90 minutes. And its images are of such high quality that they can be enlarged to show great detail. Pilots have got to figure out how best to employ 360 cameras, and when that happens, we'll be able to make viewers feel like they're right there with us. Dave Hirschman, AOPA Live.
Thanks, Dave. The VIRB 360 costs around $800 and uses all of the same mounts as the previous VIRBs and GoPros.
Coming up after the break, why you might want to wait on updating your iPad or iPhone.
And learning to survive a very bad day. You're watching AOPA Live this week.
The smoke is on. He's giving everything that he's got. Oh, I'm on it! He's there!
The Red Bull Air Race World Championship returns to Indianapolis Motor Speedway, October 14th and 15th. Tickets now on sale.
Welcome back. The Red Bull Air Race picked up again in Germany this weekend. Yoshi Moroya had a blazing fast performance, winning the race and placing him second overall in the series. Martin Sanka of the Czech Republic leads overall. American Kirby Chambliss and Michael Goulian had a frustrating time in Germany. Chambliss placed sixth, while Goulian collected 4 seconds of penalties in his first run. The season finale is coming up on October 14th and 15th in Indianapolis. AOPA members can purchase discounted tickets to the race. AOPA is also throwing a party at the famous Yard of Bricks with live music, food, and a chance to meet the race pilots.
The White House is set to nominate well-known safety advocate Bruce Landsberg to the National Transportation Safety Board. He'll serve 5 years after the Senate confirms him. The former Air Force officer and flight safety trainer was also head of the AOPA Air Safety Institutes.
Bruce was an early advocate of traffic information systems in the cockpit, and according to the General Aviation Manufacturers Association, more than 40,000 GA aircraft have now installed ADS-B out. ADS-B gives pilots information on other traffic near them, along with weather and TFR information. Anyone flying in airspace where a transponder is required today will need to have ADS-B out installed before 2020.
If you're thinking about installing iOS 11 on your Apple device, you might want to think again about that. Apple's newest update to their operating system might break some flight planning apps. ForeFlight and FlyQ recommend waiting to update until they can completely check out the compatibility with the new operating system. However, AOPA's apps are already iOS 11 ready.
This Saturday, it's all about girls in aviation. Women in Aviation International is hosting Girls in Aviation Day. The event will give girls a chance to learn and to get excited about aviation. They will get hands-on experience flying simulators and talking to pilots. There are events all over the world, including one at our National Aviation Community Center here in Frederick, Maryland. To find an event near you, visit the Women in Aviation International website. And the AOPA fly-in to Groton, Connecticut is just a few weeks away. You'll want to be there on October 6th and 7th for a fly-in New England style. It'll be near peak fall foliage then. There's 2 great days of family-friendly activities along the Atlantic coast. Find all the details and make your plans on the fly-in section of our website. And there will be more things to do in Groton besides check out the foliage. Our fly-ins also include a wide variety of seminars and educational opportunities.
They do indeed. And Groton will have a training opportunity that you won't likely find anywhere else. It's got to be every pilot's worst nightmare, crashing into the water upside down at night in severe weather. Like anything in aviation, you will not rise to the occasion, but rather sink to the level of your training. AOPA Live's Paul Harrop shows us a company in Groton that will prepare you to face that scenario head on and live to tell about it.
It's nighttime at sea. You're in the water after your aircraft went down. Your training kicked in on how to egress, but now you're waiting on rescue. A helicopter hovers above, but it's hard to see with 60-mile-an-hour wind blowing rain in your face. The searchlight is blinding. But these guardsmen know what to expect in that scenario, and they know how to survive. They've been there, done that, thanks to Survival Systems USA.
Our practical training environment it feels very realistic.
It's like a Hollywood production in this 2-story tank across from the Groton Airport.
We use realistic life rafts. Our aircraft simulator, the METS, Modular Egress Training Simulator, has realistic exits on the outside. It has realistic aircraft type of configurations on the inside.
Today, it's configured for the Black Hawk that these men crew, but there are realistic controls, bulkheads, and exits for most any type of aircraft.
Our main focus, our core competency, is teaching underwater egress and water survival for aviators.
The experts at Survival Systems USA do that through a training course that builds on each previous step of the process and uses realistic motion. You're in the aircraft, it goes down and rolls over underwater. This is as close to the real thing as you can get.
We really focus on the pre-impact, how to prepare for that water landing, that water contact incident, what to do to get out of the aircraft once the violent motion is stopped, and then what you need to know in order to survive at the surface long enough for rescue to come on scene.
Mayday, this is Reach 918, 58 degrees north, 134 degrees west.
It's to give you all the tools you need along with the experience of having done it, because without putting it into practice,
that experience for the uninitiated may be enough to prevent somebody from being successful for getting themselves out. So coming to a place where you can build on subsequent experiences and learn how to deal with the disorientation, the low light, low visibility scenario, locate and jettison emergency exits, and successfully get yourself out really goes a long way towards preparing somebody for, God forbid, ever having to deal with that in their life.
In Groton, Connecticut, Paul Harrop, AOPA Live.
The expert staff at Survival Systems USA are ready to teach you how to stay safe. They're participating in our Friday workshops at the AOPA Fly-In to Groton. Join them for Flying in the Extremes, Water Survival Tips and Techniques. Find information and pre-register on our website. And if you're not interested in that full-day workshop, you can get a tour of Survival Systems USA during the fly-in.
And just a few weeks after our Groton fly-in, AOPA will be hosting a fly-in to Tampa, Florida, presented by the Peter O. Knight Airport on October 27th and 28th. Tampa was mercifully spared major damage from Hurricane Irma. As part of the fly-in, attendees will have an opportunity to fly out to the Bahamas. The trip, escorted by experienced island pilots, will go from Peter O. Knight to Grand Bahamas Island. On the island, visitors will be staying at the all-inclusive Viva Wyndham Fortuna Beach Resort. The Bahamas are a beautiful place to fly with good weather and clear blue water. To find out more and to register, visit our fly-in website. So Tom, lots of great flying opportunities for our folks coming up.
Yeah, there really are. The Bahamas are great. But if you've never done it, maybe a little bit intimidated, this is an opportunity to do it with other folks who have done it before. It'll be well organized, so I think it'll be a lot of fun. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. We really appreciate you sharing a bit of your day with us.
And we hope to see you back here next Thursday for another edition of AOPA Live This Week.
Meet the pilots who fly with AOPA Insurance. They love flying and saving money, just like you. At AOPA Insurance, we understand how you fly and provide the coverage you need to keep on flying. Call for a free quote and see which AOPA insurance plan is right for you.